The WNBA and its owners have sent a proposal to the union. After 6 weeks of seeing Nneka Ogwumike show up on the caller ID and just letting the phone ring, after 6 weeks of receiving text messages from the players union and leaving them on red, after 6 weeks of email after email after email after email, and the owners saying, gosh, these chicks are annoying. Finally, they said, you know what? Let's just throw something together real quick.
They went silent for 6 weeks. Not we're reviewing it, silent. Not we'll circle back, silent. I'm talking about the kind of silence that tells you the answer before you ever get one. Messages left hanging, emails sitting unopened, calls that never get returned. 42 days where the players' union kept reaching out and the league acted like the conversation didn't exist. And then, late last week, the owners finally sent something back.
That the WNBA has submitted a new proposal today to the WNBPA, as expected following Monday's meeting. The WNBA Players Association initially submitted a proposal around Christmas that the league had yet to formally respond to until today. They sent a proposal around Christmas, and here we are 1 week out from Valentine's Day, and the league said, all right, just send them something.
But the timing is the point, because while union leadership was on the road talking to players and pushing the idea that there was still plenty of runway, the league was apparently using that same window to slow walk everything. The response didn't feel like a fresh counter. It felt like someone dusted off a document, tweaked a few lines, and hit send when it became inconvenient to keep ignoring people. The players put their proposal on the table around Christmas. Now it's basically mid-February, and only now does the league decide it's time to engage. That's not good faith negotiation. That's leverage. That's a pacing tactic meant to remind the union who controls the clock, who decides what's urgent, and who gets forced to react. Because if this was truly collaborative, you don't disappear for 6 weeks and call it progress. Collaboration doesn't look like radio silence. If both sides are truly working together, there's constant contact, even when it's tense. You trade drafts, you clarify language, you argue over numbers, you keep the line open. The only time you pull a 6-week silent treatment is when you're trying to send a cold, deliberate message that the leverage isn't split. It's sitting on one side of the table. Now, to be fair, we still don't have the full breakdown of the league's newest proposal.
It would soon have a new proposal on a collective bargaining agreement. It came Friday evening. When the WNBA submitted its latest proposal to the union, a source told ESPN, confirming news first reported by the Associated Press. This ended a more than 6-week wait from the Players Association for a counter to its latest offer. Players waking up every day. Did they respond yet? No. Hey, just checking in. Any update? It wasn't immediately known what the league's new offer.
Nothing has leaked in a detailed way, the league hasn't laid it out publicly, and the union is doing what it should do by staying quiet while it reviews the document. That part is normal. What isn't normal is the context we already have, because we know what the last offer looked like. And that gives us a baseline for how aggressive the owners have been positioning themselves from the start. In the previous package, they were already pointing to dozens of upgrades compared to the current CBA. Not vague promises, actual line item changes. Some were perks, like every player getting a free league pass subscription. Nice, but that's not the headline. The headline was the money trajectory. The owners were talking about a structure that could take max pay from the current range into a completely different universe over the life of the deal, with numbers that floated into the millions. That kind of jump isn't a small tweak. That's a directional shift, and it changes what the league can sell to rookies, veterans, and future stars. And it wasn't just salary talk. Travel was in there too, with charter flights positioned to be fully codified, so the grind of commercial travel isn't treated like a rite of passage anymore. Then there were protections that hit on real life, not just basketball, like language designed to give pregnant players more control, including the ability to refuse certain trade outcomes. So even without the new details, the story is already clear. The league wasn't starting from zero. They already placed a stack of improvements on the table, which makes the silence, the delay, and the timing of the response feel less like negotiation and more like strategy. Add in the extra layers the league already floated, and it gets even harder to pretend this is all smoke and mirrors. 2 developmental roster spots per team is not just a cute talking point. That's more jobs, more runway for late bloomers, more talent staying paid and plugged into the system instead of disappearing overseas or out of basketball entirely. It's an ecosystem move, and it matters. So with travel improvements, life protections, and a compensation path that looks nothing like the old structure, the obvious question is why this still isn't done. It comes down to revenue sharing, specifically the push for a major percentage of net revenue. That's the slice of money left after expenses, and expenses in pro sports are not a rounding error. Travel, facilities, staffing, marketing, insurance, operations, arena costs. You don't get to ignore any of it just because the product is growing. And this is where the players' argument runs into uncomfortable math. Because if the league is still losing money in a given year, demanding a bigger fixed share of the pie doesn't magically create a larger pie. It just changes who has to cover the shortfall. In plain terms, you're asking owners to fund a larger guaranteed payout while the business itself is still in the red. That's why the reported loss number keeps coming up in these conversations. If the WNBA can post record attention and still finish the year underwater, then the question isn't whether the league is popular. The question is where the extra cash is supposed to come from right now, in the current financial reality, without turning the gap into an even bigger owner subsidy. And you can hear the framing from union leadership that makes the divide even sharper.
Revenue sharing in their effort to strike a new CBA. We get it, revenue sharing, we get it. If that's the only key issue, well, just say that's the only key issue, not few key issues. It's the only key issue. The WNBA, the owners, they've given them everything else but the 30%. That's all they want, is just the 30%. The CBA is supposed to begin May 8th. The season is supposed to begin May 8th, but an expansion draft, free agency, and a rookie draft also need to happen before the league tips off. Ogumake said once revenue sharing is solved,
the message is basically, once revenue sharing is solved, everything else will move fast, which tells you everything, because it implies the other pieces are already largely aligned and the real fight is concentrated in one place. From the owner's side, they can point to a long list of improvements and say, we moved on the working conditions, we moved on quality of life, we moved on pathways to higher pay, we moved on player protections. From the union side, they can look at the one remaining wall and say, this is the principle that matters most. The smart players understand what that actually means. This isn't a case where nothing is happening. This is a case where most of it is close. And the last step is the one that decides whether the numbers can hold up. You can't share profits that aren't there. That's the core problem with trying to copy-paste the NBA's framework onto a league that isn't operating on the NBA's economics. NBA players can negotiate around a clean split of basketball-related income because the NBA is a massive, mature business with deep, consistent revenue streams and money left over to distribute.
the league's previous offer last month would guarantee a maximum salary of $1 million in 2026. That could reach 1.3 through revenue sharing. That's up from the current $249,000 and could grow to nearly $2 million over the life of the agreement. That was on slides that were presented to players at Money Meeting and obtained by ESPN and other outlets. The slides also outlined 37 areas where the league was willing to make concessions that players wanted. Some of these proposals included adding 2 developmental player slots to teams, giving pregnant players the right to refuse trades, which I think is huge, actually.
The WNBA is still in the phase where outside support, including ongoing backing tied to NBA ownership, is part of what keeps the operation stable year to year. So when the union pushes for an NBA-style model as if the starting conditions are identical, it creates a disconnect. It sounds like a fairness argument, but it functions like a timing argument. The model they want is built for a league that already prints surplus, not one that's still climbing toward it. And then you get the messaging whiplash that makes the union look shaky from the outside. Because for weeks, the public posture was clear. The 6-week delay was disrespect, a freeze-out, a power play by the owners. Then, in the next breath, you hear leadership describing that same delay as a gift because it gave them time to talk to players, gather feedback, read the fine print, and take the temperature of the league. If the silence was a strategic insult, call it that. If it was genuinely useful time, call it that. But you can't run both stories at the same time without losing credibility. That credibility matters because there's a real calendar staring everyone down and it doesn't care about anyone's narrative. The season is supposed to open May 8th. Before opening night, the league has to move through the steps that make a season possible. Expansion logistics for Toronto and Portland have to take shape, rosters have to be built, free agency has to open so teams can sign players, and a rookie draft has to bring new talent into the system. And this offseason is even more sensitive because a huge chunk of the league is sitting in free agency limbo, largely because players opted out with the expectation that a new agreement would unlock higher salaries and better terms.
Important. The CBA was announced in the middle of January 2020, a month after it had been agreed to. It could easily take 2 months from when a new CBA is reached to get the start of free agency, which was supposed to begin last month. With a massive salary raise expected in a new CBA, 80% of players in the league are free agents this offseason, which makes this the biggest opportunity for player movement in the history of the WNBA. A delay would hurt both sides, as every game that is missed, revenue would be lost, as would sponsorships, television money, and fan support. Ogwumike, who is in her third term.
That's why this moment is so high stakes. On paper, it should be the biggest player movement window the WNBA has ever had. In reality, it's stuck. And the longer it stays stuck, the more it starts to cost everyone. Brands hesitate when they can't confirm inventory. Broadcast partners need certainty for schedules and marketing plans. Teams can't commit budgets and roster strategy. Fans start asking the worst question any league can invite, which is whether the season is even secure. Uncertainty is a tax, and it's the kind that quietly eats momentum, especially when the league is coming off its strongest year of attention. The union keeps projecting confidence, but the clock doesn't care how confident anyone feels. It only cares whether a deal gets done in time for the machine to start moving again. Saying games will be played isn't a plan. It's a placeholder. Because the real question isn't whether basketball happens at all, it's what version of a season we're talking about if this drags into the spring. Are we looking at a full 44-game schedule the league has been building toward, with a normal ramp-up into camp and a clean runway for marketing and broadcast? Or are we talking about a shortened season that becomes a sprint, where everything is compressed, chaotic, and everyone loses something? 10 games, 20 games, 30 games, those aren't interchangeable outcomes. They change paychecks, bonuses, service time, health planning, team operations, and the overall product that fans and partners are asked to buy into. And that's why vague reassurances from leadership aren't cutting it anymore. Players have real bills. If there's uncertainty, some of them have to start making decisions now about overseas opportunities and timing, because those contracts don't wait for a press release. Teams need to know whether to schedule camps, lock in facilities, coordinate staffing, and plan roster moves. Fans need to know if they're buying season tickets with confidence or gambling on a calendar that might shift under their feet. There's also a hard truth that leadership rarely says out loud because it's uncomfortable. If there is a work stoppage, the league does not exist in a vacuum. There are hundreds of elite women's basketball players outside the WNBA ecosystem who would jump at the chance to take a roster spot. Some have been grinding overseas for years, playing heavy minutes, living on short-term deals, waiting for an opening. The idea that every potential replacement player would sit back out of solidarity is wishful thinking.
And when the owners resubmit the same proposal they submitted before the players... This would be the funny thing. If the owners, just like the players send a proposal to the owners say, fuck no. The players send them the same thing. The owners say, I'm not even gonna respond.
If the opportunity is a real contract, real exposure, and a shot at staying in the league, plenty of people will say yes. And fans can feel that tension too. Look at the reactions anytime union statements hit social media. A lot of supporters aren't even angry at first, they're confused. They're asking why this is still stuck when so many quality of life and compensation upgrades have already been on the table. Charter travel, better conditions, salary growth, benefits. The public sees those wins and wonders why the league is being pushed toward the brink over a revenue-sharing structure that doesn't line up with the league's current financial reality. That's what makes the framing risky. When you present this as a simple fight for respect and equity, but the sticking point looks like an accounting model that can't function yet, people start to see it as leverage politics, not justice. And the longer it drags, the harder it becomes to keep the audience aligned with the messaging, because uncertainty doesn't just hurt owners, it hurts everyone who's been building the momentum, which is the maddening part. The WNBA just had its best season ever in terms of attention and trajectory. Caitlin Clark helped pull in a level of national focus that the league has been chasing for years, and moments like that are rare. When a league finally catches that wave, the priority becomes protecting the runway, not lighting it on fire while you argue about a system that only works once the revenue base is bigger. The league finally had the kind of year people have been predicting for a decade. Ratings climbed across the board. Buildings got louder. Road games started feeling like events. National coverage didn't just spike, it stuck around long enough to feel like the WNBA had actually crossed into a new tier of relevance. And that's why this moment feels so backwards. Because instead of stacking momentum on top of momentum, we're burning daylight arguing about whether there's even going to be a season. It's hard to watch a league come off a breakthrough year and immediately drift into a standoff where the headline becomes labor uncertainty instead of growth. What makes it even sharper is the sense that the priorities aren't aligned. From the outside, it doesn't look like the main goal is simply getting the best realistic deal for the most players right now. It looks like leadership is trying to win a bigger philosophical fight, one that sounds good in speeches, but gets messy when it collides with the actual economics and the actual timeline. Because here's the blunt reality of leverage.
More, because this is an emotional bunch here. I like that, Bane. The owners are just going to submit the same proposal they submitted before the Players Association's December proposal. How funny would that be? Now, Nneka Ogwumike was down there at Athletes Limited. In hindsight, now we know that they sent a proposal. But let's just read along, shall we? President Nneka Ogwumike and WNBA staff were in Nashville last night, where they held a players-only meeting with AU players, including executive committee members Brianna Turner and Alicia Clark.
The owners can wait. They have diversified money. They have other investments. They can stretch this out because the WNBA is not the only thing keeping their households afloat. The players don't have that luxury. They need the season for salary. They need it for visibility. They need it because pro sports careers are short and the window of public attention is even shorter. Momentum is not a guaranteed resource. If casual fans drift away, they don't always return the next year. Sponsors don't keep writing checks into fog. TV partners don't build campaigns around uncertainty. When you cool off a hot product, you risk turning a breakout into a missed moment. That's why all the talk about power dynamics lands differently when you ask the next question. What does follow-through actually look like here? Are the players truly prepared to sit out a season over the structure of revenue sharing? Are they ready to pause careers, lose reps, and sacrifice visibility to make a point about net versus gross frameworks? Because that's what this is narrowing into, not a fight about whether players deserve better conditions or better pay. Most people agree on that, and a lot of that progress appears to already be within reach. The remaining conflict is about the model and the timing, and the cost of holding out is not abstract. It's paid in missed checks and missed opportunities. And the part no one says cleanly in public is the internal split that these moments create. A lot of players just want clarity. They want to play. They want to compete. They want to build on what last season started and keep the league in the spotlight while it's still there. But when the messaging turns into accepting a deal equals betrayal, it puts enormous pressure on players who are simply trying to plan their lives like professionals. Now zoom back to the calendar because it's relentless. The union put its proposal in around the holidays. The owners took weeks to respond. The union now has to review the new offer, decide what's workable, decide what's not, and decide how hard to push. Every day that review takes is a day closer to May 8th with Major League business still frozen. Expansion needs to move. Free agency needs to open. Teams need to build rosters. Camps need to be planned. Players need to know where they're living and what they're earning. Instead, everything is locked in a holding pattern while both sides wait for the other to flinch. And from the owner's perspective, they think they've already moved a long way. That belief, whether you agree with it or not, is what makes them comfortable staying in place. The longer this goes, the more the pressure shifts away from the people with portfolios and toward the people who need the next paycheck. Right now, both sides are staring at each other and calling it strategy. The players look at revenue sharing and feel like they're being asked to settle for crumbs while the league grows around them. The owners look at the books and feel like they're being asked to promise a percentage that doesn't match the current reality. And because each side believes time strengthens their position, neither one is sprinting toward the middle, but time isn't on anyone's side. Every week without a deal chips away at trust with sponsors, broadcasters, and partners who need certainty to plan. Every week, the story stays stuck on labor drama is a week the league's momentum gets diluted. Fans have short attention spans and endless alternatives. If you leave the product in limbo long enough, people don't protest, they just move on. This isn't chess. It's not a classroom debate about leverage. It's a league that finally had a breakout window and is now flirting with the idea of wasting it over an argument about how to split money that, at least for now, isn't being generated as distributable surplus. So what happens next is predictable. The union reviews the new proposal. If it doesn't shift meaningfully toward the model they want, they likely push back. The owners, convinced they've already moved plenty, dig in. The calendar keeps turning. We creep closer to May 8th with the same headline hanging over everything. And eventually, someone has to decide whether this fight is worth the collateral damage. If you've watched pro sports long enough, you know how these stories usually end. A deal gets done late. Both sides hold a press conference. Both sides claim victory. Nobody admits they blinked. The agreement looks like a compromise that neither side would have accepted a month earlier. The problem is, even if that happens, the cost doesn't disappear. The uncertainty alone has a price. Off-season excitement gets replaced by frustration. Expansion hype gets muted. Player movement, which should be fueling headlines, gets trapped behind a locked door. And when fans look back, they remember that the league came close to sabotaging its own rise at the exact moment it should have been accelerating. Here's the part that matters, though. Players deserve better. Better compensation, better conditions, better respect. That's not controversial. And from what we've already seen in prior talks, a lot of those improvements are closer than people want to admit. Not perfect, not everything, but enough to represent a real shift in quality of life and pay scale. Sometimes the smartest move is taking the massive win that's available now, then building leverage for the next round when the economics actually support the model you're asking for. Because there's a difference between what you deserve in principle and what a league can sustain this year without turning every gain into a bigger deficit someone else has to cover. If the league continues to grow, a more aggressive revenue-sharing structure might make a lot more sense in a few years. But if the league is still operating with significant losses, locking in a large gross-based split can become a math problem, not a moral statement. And no amount of rhetoric changes the spreadsheet. So the real question is simple. Do you accept the transformative progress that's realistically on the table right now and keep the momentum alive? Or do you risk the entire season to chase a structure that the current business may not be able to support yet? Drop your take in the comments. Are the players right to hold the line for a gross revenue model, or should they take the major gains now and revisit revenue sharing in the next negotiation when the financial foundation is stronger?
Is the response. They need to be realistic and sign that on the dotted line. Annie, you are too old guard positive for me. Oh, call out these delusional, entitled, childish, unprofessional, low IQ players still listening to the union leaders that want the season canceled. Wake up, fools. Yeah, that's a good point. The executive committee, they're really capitalizing on the lack of understanding that some players have. They're really taking advantage of that.
Because this stalemate ends the same way all stalemates end, when someone decides the price of holding out has become too high. Right now, both sides are staring at each other and calling it strategy. The players look at revenue sharing and feel like they're being asked to settle for crumbs while the league grows around them. The owners look at the books and feel like they're being asked to promise a percentage that doesn't match the current reality. And because each side believes time strengthens their position, neither one is sprinting toward the middle. But time isn't on anyone's side. Every week without a deal chips away at trust with sponsors, broadcasters, and partners who need certainty to plan. Every week the story stays stuck on labor drama is a week the league's momentum gets diluted. Fans have short attention spans and endless alternatives. If you leave the product in limbo long enough, people don't protest, they just move on. This isn't chess. It's not a classroom debate about leverage. It's a league that finally had a breakout window and is now flirting with the idea of wasting it over an argument about how to split money that, at least for now, isn't being generated as distributable surplus. So what happens next is predictable. The union reviews the new proposal. If it doesn't shift meaningfully toward the model they want, they likely push back. The owners, convinced they've already moved plenty, dig in. The calendar keeps turning. We creep closer to May 8th with the same headline hanging over everything, and eventually someone has to decide whether this fight is worth the collateral damage. If you've watched pro sports long enough, you know how these stories usually end. A deal gets done late. Both sides hold a press conference. Both sides claim victory. Nobody admits they blinked. The agreement looks like a compromise that neither side would have accepted a month earlier. The problem is, even if that happens, the cost doesn't disappear. The uncertainty alone has a price. Off-season excitement gets replaced by frustration. Expansion hype gets muted. Player movement, which should be fueling headlines, gets trapped behind a locked door. And when fans look back, they remember that the league came close to sabotaging its own rise at the exact moment it should have been accelerating. Here's the part that matters, though. Players deserve better. Better compensation, better conditions, better respect. That's not controversial. And from what we've already seen in prior talks, a lot of those improvements are closer than people want to admit. Not perfect, not everything, but enough to represent a real shift in quality of life and pay scale. Sometimes the smartest move is taking the massive win that's available now, then building leverage for the next round when the economics actually support the model you're asking for. Because there's a difference between what you deserve in principle and what a league can sustain this year without turning every gain into a bigger deficit someone else has to cover. If the league continues to grow, a more aggressive revenue-sharing structure might make a lot more sense in a few years. But if the league is still operating with significant losses, locking in a large gross-based split can become a math problem, not a moral statement. And no amount of rhetoric changes the spreadsheet. So the real question is simple. Do you accept the transformative progress that's realistically on the table right now and keep the momentum alive? Or do you risk the entire season to chase a structure that the current business may not be able to support yet? Are the players right to hold the line for a gross revenue model? Or should they take the major gains now and revisit revenue sharing in the next negotiation when the financial foundation is stronger? Because this stalemate ends the same way all stalemates end, when someone decides the price of holding out has become too high. And this is the moment where the league has to stop talking in circles and decide what it actually wants to protect. Because if everyone agrees the WNBA is finally rising, then the worst possible move is to stall the engine right as it catches fire. You don't gamble away a historic surge in attention over a model that only works when the underlying economics can actually carry it. You don't turn the best off-season opportunity in league history into a staring contest that freezes expansion, free agency, training camps, and every major business deal attached to the season. This isn't just about pride, it's about consequences. Every day without clarity forces players into survival decisions. Every day without a deal makes teams hold their breath. Every day without certainty makes sponsors hesitant and broadcasters uneasy. And every day fans are told, don't worry, games will be played, without specifics. Is another day casual viewers start checking out because uncertainty is exhausting. Momentum is fragile. Once it cools, it doesn't instantly come back when the paperwork finally gets signed. Players deserve more. They deserve to be paid like the elite athletes they are. They deserve better conditions, better protections, better respect. That part is not up for debate. But the question that decides everything is timing. Do you take the biggest leap forward that's available right now and keep the league moving? Or do you risk losing the season to chase a perfect structure that might only be sustainable later? Because here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. If this turns into a full-scale stoppage, the damage won't land on the owners first. It lands on the players who need those checks, who need that exposure, who need to stay visible while the spotlight is finally bright. And once the public starts to feel like the league is being held hostage by a fight the numbers can't support yet, support starts to fracture. Not because fans hate the players, but because fans don't like being asked to pick sides in a battle that keeps them from watching the game. So the clock is ticking. May 8th is not a suggestion, it's a deadline. And if both sides keep acting like time is their weapon, time is going to become the thing that punishes everyone. Now it comes down to one decision. Is this fight worth the cost? And that's where I want to hear from you. Should the players hold the line for a gross revenue model, even if it risks the season? Or should they lock in the massive gains on the table and come back for the bigger slice when the league's finances actually justify it? Tap in with your take and keep it locked right here on Courtside Leaks. We've got every angle covered, every leak, every backstage twist, every moment they won't show you. Hit like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share this video. Stay locked in with Courtside Leaks, your home for the truth behind the WNBA headlines.